Talking all things SEC and college football with the co-host of Crain Company, one of the best daily shows out there. Of course, Jake Crain joins us weekly. David Cohn, one of the three amigos, is on the show now. David, what's going on, man? Appreciate you taking the time. Glad we were able to link up, my friend.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much for having me, man.
Let's start, David. Of course, you and I both were in Tuscaloosa. You guys were at Innisfree, which shout out to those guys, and I saw the clip. Give me an idea of what watching the game was like at Innisfree, and where does that moment rank? The clip that you posted, Ryan Williams touchdown. Where does that moment rank in regards to content ventures for you? Because again, I'd have to imagine that's got to be near the top, experiencing that moment amongst all the great Alabama fans at, again, one of the best establishments in Tuscaloosa.
Well, I'll just break it down in the context of me personally, because I'm not sure how familiar your listeners are. But obviously, I married an Alabama girl. I married the daughter of Richard Todd. He played quarterback for Bear Bryant. He played quarterback for the New York Jets. And so I married into this Roll Tide, as did my co-host Jake. We married into this Roll Tide family. And look, Tuscaloosa is the mecca of college football. And so with no more divisions in the SEC, when I saw the schedule come out that Georgia, the state where I'm from Statesboro, Georgia, Georgia was going to go on the road and play Alabama in Tuscaloosa, I kind of had my eye on this all summer. I said, that's going to be one of the most anticipated college football games of the last several decades. Nick Saban retiring, Kalen DeBoer coming in. So that was already going to be the case. But then my college roommate, Nick Sheridan, is now the offensive coordinator at Alabama. And, you combine all of these factors, and it was just, we started to have conversations like, we've got to be in Tuscaloosa when Georgia comes to town. I think both teams will be undefeated. I think Alabama's going to go on the road and beat Wisconsin. I didn't know that Georgia was going to get such a scare from Kentucky, which, I'm sure, we can talk about Kentucky and Ole Miss and all that here in a little bit, but we had our eye on that game. And I'm so glad that we were able to take our show on the road and say, hey, we're going to commit to this weekend. It's very tough to do that because we have to watch every single game, and we have a Sunday recap show, and we have, a daily show all throughout the week, Monday through Friday. So it's really tough to take our show on the road. But I'm glad we committed to that. And to do our simulcast from Innisfree was one of the coolest experiences. We wanted to be a part of the Tuscaloosa community, and that's one of the most famous bars there. We had some great connections. They were able to hook us up. So to be able to simulcast from there, it was awesome. But then, throughout the course of the game, Alabama's beating Georgia so thoroughly, I was running out of stuff to say. Jalen Milroe was throwing a perfect game into like the fifth inning, right? He's 11 for 11, just absolutely dominating Georgia. I've never seen Georgia, since Kirby Smart's been the head coach, for it to look like the other team had better players and that they were executing better. That combination was incredible. All of a sudden you look up, it's 28-0 there right before halftime. So I was kind of running out of stuff to say. And in the second half, Georgia starts to chip away. And when they found themselves with a lead on those back-to-back touchdowns and the way that they got that last one with the big shot play themselves, it was incredible. And that whole place, except for one little corner of Georgia fans, was completely silent. And I was shocked. I have to say I was absolutely shocked. And then what does Alabama do? They come out 1st and 10 on their drive. They take a shot to Ryan Williams. And when he caught that ball, that bar exploded in a way that it's just almost undescribable. And I'm so glad we were able to capture that moment on video because we were simulcasting from there. So it ended up being a really great football game, which is what we thought we would get from the beginning, a little back and forth. But what an unusual and unique way to get a close game at the end.
So, David, when you look at that game, because, again, we were there as well, and it was great to link up. I missed you, by the way, but was able to see Jake and Blaine and the boys and the night before the game. But, I found myself, David, watching that game, the analyst in us, wants to have these takeaways and these opinions. That's obviously what we do. It comes very naturally. But also there was a large part of me that just took a moment to sit back and enjoy and watch that thing as like an observer and a fan of college football. Like how much of that was for you? Because again, as much as, coming into Monday, I almost wanted to be like, guys, let's just take a moment of silence for what we just witnessed. Because again, it was an instant classic. It was a lead on elite. It had everything you could want and then some. Walking away from that for you, were there any like conclusions you drew from that game, or was it more so like an appreciation for what you witnessed? Because I kind of found myself in the middle of that. It's like, man, let's just take a moment to, we'll have the takes all week long about what we saw, but we really need to take a moment to just appreciate what it was that we actually watched.
Yeah, exactly. I think my three biggest takeaways, the first one is exactly what you're talking about. Let's have a little bit of perspective, because I do think this is the type of football game that'll be talked about for the next 30 or 40 years, right? Let's appreciate that we were there in that moment. It wasn't for an SEC championship. It wasn't for a national championship. It wasn't in some big dome stadium in a big city. It was at a college campus in Tuscaloosa in September, and it was the type of football game that I truly think we could talk about for 30 or 40 years. And that's my first takeaway, just the environment, the atmosphere, and grateful to be a part of that. My second takeaway was I don't think they're the world beaters that we thought they were before the season. Obviously, the close game at Kentucky, we kind of, Kentucky kind of always plays them tough when they're in Lexington. They don't have explosive playmakers, but they'll figure it out. But then after watching them in the first half, I don't think Georgia's the world beaters we thought they were, but still, kudos to them for being able to come back in that environment. I mean, not just the pride to be able to not quit. I mean, this is Georgia and this is Kirby Smart. I didn't think they'd lay down and quit, but the ability to, they had no answer on the offensive side or the defensive side to fight back on the road, to not just make it close, but to actually take the lead. That's truly incredible by Georgia. So look, we're going to have to have a real conversation now moving forward on what they are and what they can be, because you still got away games at Ole Miss, and now Ole Miss has a loss. You're going to have a away game at Texas. Quinn Ewers hasn't come back yet. You're going to have Tennessee at home. It's everything we want to see from Georgia, we're going to get a chance for moving forward. And then my third takeaway is, if Jalen Milroe is going to be that efficient through the air, if he's going to be able to throw the football that well in the intermediate and short passing game, combined with how well he already throws the vertical ball, combined with how well he already runs the football, then Alabama can beat any team in the country. Now, can beat any team and will beat every team. Those are two different things. I understand that. But the product that I saw from Alabama in Tuscaloosa says that they can, without a doubt, win the national championship. And I think that was one of those big questions. Hey, Nick Saban is gone now. He's retired. Kalen DeBoer is a proven winner, but still, what are the chances he could win the championship in year one? There was a mass exodus of players in the transfer portal. Well, no, that product looked like they can win the national championship. So, yeah, it was a combination for me. Look, appreciation for the environment and the football game and the perspective. And then also, some key takeaways for both programs.
David, you mentioned Georgia not being the world beaters we thought they would be. So I want to zoom out and look at the entire college football landscape. I don't feel like we have that one team that's just kind of above the rest right now. Like, I don't think we have that one that has clearly separated themselves from the pack that everyone else is chasing. Like, when you zoom out from just the SEC-wide view and look at look at college football, David, as a whole, what are your thoughts about the top? Because, again, I think before the season, so many thought we would be on a collision course for Georgia and Ohio State in the national championship, this battle of titans, the two best rosters. I don't know that it's that simple anymore, David.
Hey, and look, it could still be that, right? College football is one sport where the best rosters usually play for the championships and win the championship. So we still may get that. But the fact that there's no lead dog right now, I think is a good thing for college football. I want to make one more point here on the Georgia-Alabama game before I forget, because there's this narrative that Alabama got complacent after they took a lead, and that's why Georgia was able to come back. I couldn't disagree with that more. I rewatched the game again on Monday morning. There were times where I'm screaming at the TV for them to be a little bit more conservative. I wanted to see them take the clock down even more at certain points, especially there midway through the fourth quarter. The drive when they were up 28-0 and Georgia scores and it's 28-7. Alabama comes out, throws the ball 4 or 5 straight times. They get a 4th and 1. Instead of kicking the field goal, they're going for that, even though they're up by 3 touchdowns. I think it was a situation where when a team has their back so against the wall, that early in the game the way Georgia did, you're going for every single fourth down. Remember, Georgia couldn't convert any third downs. They converted all their fourth downs. So when you're going for every fourth down, when you're not kicking any field goals because you need touchdowns, when you're going for every 2-point conversion, that changes the dynamic of the game a little bit. I just wanted to make that one point because that's been a narrative that's been going on around Alabama, kind of falling apart there in the second half. But to your national landscape question, yeah, look, we're going to find out a lot more about the Buckeyes in the next 4 weeks. They get Iowa now coming up. They're going to get Penn State. They're going to go on the road to Oregon, I believe, next week. So the Buckeyes out of conference schedule has been extremely weak. And so to even talk about them in the national landscape right now, I think is unfair. Look what just happened to Ole Miss. They started with an extremely weak schedule. Now they play Kentucky, and now they have a loss. So I think the Buckeyes are still really, really good. And I've seen this movie as a former Michigan player. I've seen this movie every year for a long time, where they continue to be really good. They have, explosive players on the outside. I think they've gotten better on the offensive and defensive line with those seniors coming back. And then you add star players in the transfer portal like Judkins and Caleb Downs. We know that the roster's there. They're going to be really good. We just have to see it against really good competition. I don't think Oregon is as good as I thought they were. Let's see if they figure it out. Dylan Gabriel's still one of my favorite quarterbacks in the country. As far as the ACC, look, Miami, sort of the defense, especially the secondary, kind of got exposed a little bit against Virginia Tech, but I think the rest of that roster is still really good. I think Cam Ward is still going to be a Heisman finalist at the end of the day. And you talk about weaker schedules to start the season. If Clemson had scheduled South Carolina State instead of Georgia week 1 and beat them by 50 points, which they would have, we would be talking about them as a top 3 or 4 team right now. So kind of, that was, we're lucky as college football fans that we got the Clemson Georgia game in week 1 so that we could find out a little more about them early on. And they're still very much alive. So at the beginning of the year, I thought the Big 12 would be a little better than the ACC. I thought we could see 4 teams from the SEC, 4 teams from the Big 10, or maybe 5 and 4, or some sort of combination like that. And then the question was, does the Big 12 or the ACC get more teams than just the automatic qualifier into the college football playoff? I don't think that's the case anymore for the Big 12. I've been really disappointed with the conference. Obviously, Cam Rising getting hurt at Utah hasn't helped that. But right now, I don't think the Big 12 has a team that can even win a college football playoff game. And then let's see what happens with Georgia, like we talked about. Let's see if Ole Miss can bounce back this week on the road at South Carolina. What a game that's going to be. I mean, Ole Miss needs this because they need to stay in college football playoff contention. South Carolina and Shane Beamer needs this win because they need to start to build that momentum. And now Lenora Sellers sounds like he's going to come back and be healthy for the game. So that one right there, there's all sorts of implications every single week, which is why I love college football.
David, let's zero in on that game, Ole Miss and South Carolina. I don't think it's flying under the radar, but I still don't feel like it's being talked about enough about how important it is for both sides. At Williams-Brice Stadium, we saw the environment. I was there in person for LSU, South Carolina. It was as electric as any you'll find. You can expect that again. This is the Juice Wells game, David, in case you forgot. There is a lot of really, really bad feelings still, especially on that South Carolina side. What does that mean for the game? Who knows? But it's just another thing, right, that's going to influence that crowd and that environment. You mentioned, though, all eyes are going to be on Ole Miss. I think nationally, David, there's going to be a lot of attention on this game, more so because people are going to zero in and say, okay, who is Ole Miss? Can they bounce back? But it may be the Gamecocks, to your point, that by the game's end are catching the attention of folks nationally saying, hey, don't forget about South Carolina down in Columbia. So, I mean, you mentioned it. What do you make of this game, and what does Ole Miss specifically have to do to bounce back? Because you lose this one, we're talking about the Rebels as the most disappointing team in college football in 2024, and we just got in the month of October.
It's interesting for you to say that you think this game will get a lot of attention nationally, because I was thinking the opposite. I was thinking this game is flying under the radar nationally for people outside of the SEC, because with Ole Miss now having that loss, they kind of, Lane Kiffin has done what he always does, and they're giving up. I hope that you're right and that I'm wrong, because this game should 100% not be flying under the radar. Yeah, there may be people who want to double down and see, now that Ole Miss does have a loss, let's really find out out what they're all about. But on the South Carolina side too, I mean, think about it. This team should be unbeaten. I mean, they had LSU on the ropes, man, and Lenora Sellers gets hurt. So I'm really excited for this matchup. And obviously, you know, Shane Beamer recruited me personally when he was on Sylvester Croom's staff at Mississippi State. I just like the guy personally. I know that doesn't have any bearing on what kind of job he does or whether or not he's going to be at South Carolina long term. But the guys I like to pull for. Lane Kiffin, on the other hand, I don't know him personally. He doesn't deliver for me in the big moment. I don't know. The guy was the head coach at Tennessee, was the head coach at USC and the Raiders, and now he's at Ole Miss. He just hasn't delivered. And I hope that he would even admit that. He's able to put together these really great rosters, and this year is no different. But, you know, and I don't want to disparage Kentucky fans. That Kentucky defense is clearly a serious product. When you're able to play Georgia that closely and then go on the road and beat this offense at Ole Miss, they had 1 first down. Ole Miss had 1 first down against Kentucky. That is incredible. Now, how much of that is because Kentucky's that good on defense? How much of that was Ole Miss was unprepared or coached poorly before going into that game? I think that we're going to find out. I think that we get a chance to find out this week with a South Carolina team that really lit Kentucky up and an Ole Miss team that's coming off that loss. So, look, you got to win this one. Maybe this is a case where Ole Miss players thought, oh, well, we did the hard part. We assembled a great roster. Now we just show up and they give us our trophy, right? That's not how it works. Not in this conference, especially. Every single week you have to go sing for your supper. And if you blink your eye one time, a team like Kentucky will beat you. And if you lose a second one, I don't know if you can make the college football playoff. 10-2 may get in, but you're not going to be the automatic qualifier for sure, because I don't think 2 losses is going to be able to win the conference this year. So look, you asked what they have to do. They got to get back on offense to doing what they did the first couple of weeks, which is staying ahead of the chain, staying ahead of schedule, not just with the run game, but for that quick and intermediate pass game. I mean, Lane Kiffin's one of the best play callers in the country, so I still feel really good about their offense. The question is, how effective will Lenora Sellers be on South Carolina's offense, and what does Ole Miss on defense have to carry multiple game plans depending on what quarterback they may see? Because there's a difference if Lenora Sellers is 95%. Or is he 75%? Because if he's 75%, you still start him. But is that a situation where we still see Robbie Ashford? Is Ole Miss going to have to carry multiple game plans into the game on defense? I'm not sure, but I can't wait for this game.
Yeah, it's going to be a fun one at Williams Brice. And to your point, I don't know about a 10-2 Ole Miss getting in the playoff with their schedule, the weakness we talked about during the offseason. Going to be fascinating for sure. Let's go back to the top of the conference, David. Some teams we haven't discussed: Texas, Tennessee. You know, Ole Miss was thought to be in that top 5. No more right now. We'll see if they can earn their way back. But what have you seen from those 2 teams, Texas and Tennessee? Missouri also, another unbeaten that we're not giving a lot of attention. They face Texas A&M this weekend. But, you know, it's a crowded bunch at the top. And the good news is this, David, we're going to have a bit of a round robin in the next couple of weeks where, you know, we're going to be able to separate and, you know, who's for real and maybe who's still got some things to work out. But just overall thoughts on what the top of the SEC looks like this year.
Yeah, we got a really good round robin coming up. I'll start with Texas because I saw them in person with my own eyes. They went on the road to Ann Arbor and played Michigan, and I took my family up there. I took my son to his first college football game. I'm so happy that we did it. It was a memory that I'll never forget, and we will not let the score of that game sour what was otherwise a great experience. But, yeah, Michigan had absolutely no answer on either side of the ball. One, they hadn't figured out a lot of things. I think Michigan has improved the last couple of weeks, which kudos to Sharon Moore and that staff. But on the flip side of that, Texas was just really that good. I mean, anything Steve Sarkisian and Quinn Ewers wanted to dial up, they were able to against that Wink Martindale defense. And then Michigan was so inept on offense, I really didn't even get a good look at Texas's defense. I don't know, because Michigan couldn't do anything. But I think Texas is the real deal. I think they're as good as it gets. We won't get to see them play Alabama in the regular season, which is unfortunate, but we will get to see them play Georgia. And who knows, Alabama-Texas could be the SEC championship game. Now, we can't talk about them without talking about Quinn Ewers. I don't know if Texas is a national championship winning team if Arch Manning is the starting quarterback. I think he's going to be really great. I think they're just fine. I think that they have the best quarterback duo in the country. but Quinn Ewers needs to be the starting quarterback if they're going to win a national championship. That's what I feel right now. And every year he's gotten hurt. So it was fair game for us to ask before the season started, okay, Texas can be this if Quinn Ewers stays healthy. Well, he's missed the last couple of games. So, yeah, I mean, is he going to play football or is he not going to play football? This is the question that we're asking about Utah right now, too, with Cam Rising. Utah cannot, maybe they can still win the Big 12, but I don't think they can win a playoff game if Isaac Wilson's a starting quarterback. And he's really good too. He's a true freshman. He's out there. He's playing fairly well. I think that Utah is going to be just fine with him at quarterback. But yeah, Texas, Quinn Ewers needs to be back. He needs to be healthy. And now they're going to go into, what do they have next? Red River coming up next weekend. Yeah. So,
And Quinn will be back. Quinn will be back, 100% confirmed via the Texas folks.
Okay. Well, we'll see. Again, that's the same Lenora Sellers conversation. Mm-hmm. Is he back 95% or is he back 75%? I played college football. I know how it goes when you're in week 6. You're never 100%. So what percent is he? Because that, I think, is going to dictate just how great Texas can be. On the Tennessee side, but I had Texas in Tier 1 from the get-go. I had them playing in the national championship game against Georgia in a rematch, and I had them losing that game. I think they're as good as it gets. I think that right up there in that top 3 ranking where they are is where they belong, and let's just see what happens with the quarterback health. On Tennessee, I had Tennessee at the very top of that Tier 2 entering the year, sort of a really good but not great was what I was expecting. And, man, I couldn't have been more wrong. They're so good on both sides of the ball. And the fact that Tennessee has been able to get so good on defense this early in Josh Heupel's tenure is truly incredible, because what it allows is the offense at Tennessee now doesn't have to panic the first time you get a 3-and-out or you go 3-and-out a couple times against some of these really good defenses. You no longer have to panic. You don't have to change things up for Tennessee's offense, because now there's faith in that defense to be able to get stops. And I think that Tennessee now can win in multiple ways. This isn't a couple years ago when Hendon Hooker was there, but the defense hadn't caught up yet. So you're winning games, 35-32 or something like that. Tennessee, I think, can win ugly ball games. You look at that game against Oklahoma, Josh Heupel kind of pulled a Kirby Smart where he said early on, oh, I see what kind of game this is going to be. This isn't going to be a shootout. We'll go full boa constrictor and just suffocate Oklahoma, and we'll win this game in an ugly way because we can do that now. Man, that's got to scare the rest of the SEC. And you host Alabama, and yeah, they have to go to Georgia, but I'll tell you what I saw, I've seen that the Georgia product in person as well. Tennessee can win that football game. Tennessee, for the first time, I believe, in a long time, can go to Athens and say, you know what, we can beat these boys. So I think Tennessee's right up there. Obviously, a younger quarterback and Nico. I think that for Tennessee to win the national championship, they have to do what most teams do every year, which is you have to get better every single week. Like if the Nico that we see in week 11 and 12 and possibly SEC championship game, if that Nico is completely different because he's grown than he is this week when we see Nico, then Tennessee is going to be a real problem, and I think they're going to be a national championship contender as well.
David, I want to go to that game in College Station this weekend, Texas A&M and Missouri. Whoever wins that game, should we start talking about them more seriously in the SEC race? Just from the standpoint of, A&M loses to Notre Dame week 1. It kind of feels like they've been somewhat flying under the radar since, but, are undefeated in SEC play to this point. And Missouri, back-to-back struggling performances with Boston College and Vandy. They're still undefeated coming off the bye week, but it's kind of cooled off the Missouri hype that so many built up over the offseason. But whoever wins that game, David, it feels like this is going to be a statement moment for whoever wins it and, could set them up again to be in that 10, maybe 11 win range in the SEC this year. What do you make of that game? And again, I asked the question, the winner of that game, should we take them more seriously in regards to maybe challenging that Tier 1 status?
Yeah, look, I don't know about Tier 1, but let's frame it in context here. For Missouri, first of all, with how much production they had returning from a 11-win season a year ago. I think a lot of people had high hopes for Missouri when you combine it with the schedule that they're playing too. I mean, when you look at that schedule and how many of the big teams in the SEC they're able to dodge, and then a very, very favorable non-conference schedule, I think a lot of people were saying, hey, maybe Missouri, as far as their on-field product, isn't as good as Georgia or Alabama. But when you combine that they are really, really good and they have that schedule, they could find themselves in the SEC championship game. I was in that camp before the season. And when you look at, like, look, Vanderbilt ended up being better than a lot of people thought. Diego Pavia can just flat out play football, man. And Missouri's sitting here still undefeated. So I haven't really changed my position on Missouri that much. I mean, I don't think they're going to go undefeated. I don't think they'll play in the SEC championship game, but they're still a really good football team, and their schedule is not that elite. Now, for Texas A&M, with Mike Elko coming in year one, I was a big Connor Wegman fan, and it was so unfortunate that he got injured a year ago, and I thought he was going to have a breakout year this year, and now hurt again. And Marcel Reed has come in, and like, you can't take the keys away from this kid now, especially if you win this week. That's your quarterback moving forward. So look, playing Texas A&M in College Station is always going to be a tough game. I don't care if they're up. I don't care if they're down. I don't care what team it is going to them. So Missouri now has a chance to go on the road, and Eli Drinkowitz gets to tell his team, guys, we're the underdogs in this game. We're not even favored, okay? No one in this conference respects us. We're never going to get any respect until we go on the road and we beat teams like this consistently all the time, and we force them to respect us. If you're Eli Drinkowitz, I think you're in a great spot right now because you're still unbeaten. Everything you want is still in front of you. You don't have any super major injuries other than a couple that happened preseason on the defensive line. But if you're Coach Drinkowitz, you got to love the spot that you're in. And then for Texas A&M, when you look at that schedule moving forward, I know they end the year with Texas, but I mean, up to that point, like, you really have to start having a conversation. I don't know, to answer your question, I don't know about tier one. But that game they lost at the beginning of the year is not a conference game. That loss to Notre Dame, that's not an SEC loss. And when you look at the rest of the schedule, if you're able to get past Missouri, you got to start having a serious conversation about Texas A&M being able to squeeze their way into the SEC championship, especially if you're able to beat your in-state rival, which, Chris, I'm telling you right now, I cannot wait for that one. I mean, Texas coming into the conference, Texas A&M didn't want them in the conference. Texas steals their baseball coach away. Like the narratives for that game, I already can't wait to fast forward to that one.
David Cohn of Crain Company does a fantastic job with those guys. David, one last thing, and I'll let you go really quickly. How's it been consoling both the Crain boys during Auburn's 2-3 start?
It's we have a little bit of fun with it. Obviously, I do feel their pain. I mean, I really
I feel like Jake's therapist on a weekly basis, David.
Do you? Yeah. Sometimes I do too. I love how passionate they are about their team and about college football writ large. That is what I really love, and I can tell that it pains them. And when I had to worked through some bad Michigan years too before Jim Harbaugh got there, and I had to experience some in person when I was there when Rich Rodriguez took over. So look, no one feels worse than the players. No one feels worse than the players and the coaches who are trying to turn that thing around. But yeah, I've been surprised. I've been surprised because I think Hugh Freeze is such a good football coach, especially such a good offensive football coach. The fact that he didn't go to the portal to get a different quarterback, or that even with the quarterbacks they have on the roster, that they haven't been able to tailor that offense in a way that allows for them to maximize their strengths but minimize these turnovers. I mean, Chris, we're sitting there in Innisfree ready for our live stream to start. Auburn's up 21-10 in the fourth, and I'm thinking they've got this one. They've got this one, and then they just figure out a way to lose. It's absolutely heartbreaking because I'm used to an Auburn team where we're talking about, okay, they're going to beat either Georgia or Alabama this year. Which one's it going to be? And then the rest of the schedule, they'll lose another one here or there, but they're going to be a double-digit win team, no doubt. Now we're talking about Auburn could go 4-8, man. Like Auburn could really go 4-8. That is unfathomable from where we were at the beginning of the season. But I don't think Hugh Freeze is going to get fired. I don't think he should be fired. And you and I just need to do the best we can to keep consoling these brothers because I think they need us right now.
Like I mentioned, David Cohn, Crain Company does a fantastic job. David, appreciate you taking the time, my friend. Let's definitely do this again soon.
Thank you.